Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Lots and lots of movement on the Democratic agenda. The White House now has some fairly concrete proposals, pushback from Kyrsten Sinema. The whole thing, I'm just going to be real with you, it is a dog's breakfast. It is a mess. There is very little that's redeeming about it, but we want to go through all of the details, both on the spending side and on the revenue side. According to Donald Trump, your favorite president has a new social media platform called Truth. A lot that's very interesting about that. We'll get into what maybe it says about his future plans and all of that good stuff. Southwest Airlines kind of backing down on their vaccination policy, so we'll get to that. Joe Rogan has now responded to the Don Lemon response of his interview with Sanjay Gupta, so we'll tell you what he said. We also have a couple of folks on who are trying to unionize college athletes, specifically football players. Very interesting effort there, so we'll talk to them. But we wanted to start with some of the details of the Build Back Better plan. I want to kill myself every time I say that. But let's go ahead and throw this Jeff Stein tweet up on the screen. So the White House has now gotten much more involved in the negotiations. They are saying top line number, which remember, originally $6 trillion, then it was brought down to $3.5. Now they're saying, okay, somewhere south of 1.9. 1.9 trillion is now the maximum. Of course, Joe Manchin had wanted 1.5, so much, much closer to what he and the other corporatists wanted than what Biden wanted or what the progressives want. We told you before that Manchin had basically said no to the key core of the climate provisions, which was effectively a renewable energy standard. That's out. Replacement unclear. We know the dollar amount is quite low. So whatever they're doing on climate is effectively peanuts. The child tax credit, they may extend it for 1 year. Sort of pathetic. Community college, which we had been told was actually a key priority of both the president and the first lady, that's gone, replaced by some scholarships. Pathetic. SALT still being negotiated.
Actually, that's back in from what I hear.
That's still on the table, guys. Yeah. This tweet says SALT is out, but that's actually not quite accurate. SALT's still potentially on the table in terms of making sure that rich people get their tax cuts. Pre-K, universal pre-K, this one is actually good, is still in. Childcare is still in. Hold that for a thought for a moment because there's some big problems with the program there. Big cuts to housing, elder care. They're saying they want to go forward with the Medicare benefit expansion, that's dental, vision, hearing. But the money that they're saying would go to that is not sufficient to actually do that. The other healthcare programs, including, I checked with Jeff Stein directly on this because none of the articles I was reading mentioned the Medicare prescription drug pricing negotiation. That appears to be probably out, very tenuous. There are a number of senators, not just the ones who have, made a business of being obnoxious in front of cameras on this stuff, but there are a number of other senators who take a lot of money from Big Pharma who are standing in the way of that extraordinarily popular proposal that Democrats have promised for more than a decade and which has about 80-some% support. So the bottom line is this proposal sucks. There's very little in it to like. Even if the one thing that progressives said that they had to have, they said no climate, no deal. That was the one thing they were actually clear about. Very, very little climate provisions here, and honestly, very little to get excited about in this entire package.
What I think is hilarious is all of the stuff getting put out. It broke this morning from the Wall Street Journal, Krystal, that the community college provision was killed by whom? The 4-year college degree industry. They lobbied hard against community college. Why? Because that would disrupt their corrupt pipeline to bilk people out of tens of thousands of dollars by applying to the 4-year college degree industry. And we're about to get to some even more of this stuff in the taxes segment. You guys really aren't going to believe. I do think that it really has everything. That the only thing that was out and is now back in is SALT, because there are dozens of members from the Northeast who are going to bat for SALT and say, we will not vote for this package, period. unless it includes the SALT deduction. And once again, in order to reiterate for all of you, the SALT deduction, the state and local tax deduction, was taken out by the GOP tax bill. They want to go ahead and bring it back. It is overwhelmingly, 90% of its benefit goes to people who make over $1 million a year. There's no way to spin it. It is a tax cut for the rich. In fact, given the previously meager tax increases on people who make a couple $100,000, and we will also get to whether that even is going to continue, those people would actually not pay anything more under the original Biden tax plan because of the SALT thing.
Some of them would get a tax cut overall.
And actually, Krystal, if they don't raise taxes, which we'll talk about in the next segment, they will be getting a massive tax cut. If this does go ahead and put into place hundreds of thousands of dollars in the level. But I think it's important that we focus on the part which will actually impact people's lives, and they are screwing around with childcare in pretty much the exact same way they did with Obamacare for middle-class Americans. People's childcare prices under this would almost certainly rise by thousands of dollars.
Right. So let me explain this part, and we can put Matt Brunig has been the one, the analyst who's on the left, right? I mean, this is a guy who wants to see childcare be affordable and thinks that they should go a lot further in what they're doing here. So Brunig points out, okay, what the bill says right now is they are lifting the pay of childcare workers, which is really important because childcare workers are dramatically underpaid. And so they definitely deserve a raise. There's no doubt about it. But then where's the money going to come from on the other side to pay for this raise? Well, the thing that makes sense is for the government to kind of fill the gap so that consumers can afford and workers can afford childcare for their kids. So if they want to work, they're able to work. And so childcare workers can themselves earn a living wage and earn a decent salary for taking care of all of our kids. That's what makes sense. Well, they do that at the low end of the income spectrum. But if you are a middle-class worker and your income is $1 above the levels they set here, you are likely to see a dramatic increase in your childcare costs to the tune of somewhere around $13,000 a year. And just to give you a sense here of some of the numbers that we're talking about, the Democrat child care proposal mandates higher wages for child care workers, but then does not follow through on the public subsidies for all families. The result will be a massive increase in child care fees for families with incomes slightly above their state's median income.
Oh my gosh.
So the national median income, and this is all set state by state, so whatever your state's median income is, if you're $1 above that, $13,000 a year more in childcare. I think the national median income is like $67,000 a year. So you're not talking about wealthy people here. This is the core of the middle class, not even the upper middle class. So, it's another perfect example where because they want to means test and they want to save money and they have to make it so freaking complicated, number one, that it's hard to understand. And number two, you're hurting a lot of people who, this is going to be dramatically unpopular with a lot of people. And more importantly, it's going to put them in a really bad place.
I just looked, in one of the highest cost states in the United States, in New York, the household income there is $63,998. So probably, $10,000, $15,000 or whatever lower in like Kansas, Nebraska or somewhere. But these are not rich folks we're talking about. And again, I'm talking about household income, not individual income. Josh Barro put this particularly well. And that's why I look at this just purely as Obamacare once again. Quote, "This design is too complex. Do we really want the ACA rollout all over again with sliding scale benefits and cliffs in a way that is surely incomprehensible to parents relying on states as partners? Assume a design that intentionally adds costs won't hit families?" And as we're pointing out, the design absolutely would increase that cost. If you like your child care provider, does not look like you will be able to keep that child care provider. And Krystal, I don't think it takes a genius to say $13,000 in increase per cost of after-tax income is what? Almost a fifth of what these people are making already? Actually, no, on the after-tax side, even much, much more. And so when you consider how much of an increase that would be for a lot of these people, it would actually almost conversely probably lead to women dropping out of the workforce.
That's exactly right.
I'm almost certain, right? If your price is going to go up $13,000, that could erase somebody who's making $25,000 a year in pre-tax income or something like that. And then after you consider the cost, you're just going to say, I might as well just not work. So congratulations, I guess. mess.
And there's this weird dynamic where then if mom drops out of the workforce and they're earning less money, then they fall below the median. Then they could afford childcare, but then if she goes back to work, then they're making too much and they can't afford.
These are like the original welfare penalties.
Look, I don't want to pick. There are other. The universal pre-K proposal here is actually good. It's the one thing that you can look at and say, okay, that would be a good thing. But, you know, it all comes back to a number of incredibly dumb strategic and tactical mistakes. Number one, by deciding to do this all through reconciliation. Number one, there's been incredibly little explanation, conversation, or pressure put on anyone around the specific proposals here, which are really popular, each of them individually on their own. People look at this and it's just like, you know, it's just a package of stuff, and it's hard to like really dig into the details and feel the impact of what each of these proposals would actually look like. So that's been a disaster. That's allowed Manchin and Sinema and all the other bad actors in this to effectively make this about the top line number rather than the actual specifics of the bill. So that's been a disaster. Of course, the other thing that's been a disaster, part of why this is all hamstrung right now, is because they decided to separate the thing that business does want, which is the infrastructure package, from the thing that business doesn't want, which is the social welfare spending. The minute that they pulled those two things apart, they made this whole package much, much more vulnerable. And yes, they had this, you know, complicated legislative maneuver to try to keep the two things glued together, but that created a real vulnerability here for the entire package. And the other thing that I'll say that was a dramatic mistake is Biden wanted to get this bipartisan win. That's why they stripped out the infrastructure pieces and had them on their own, which is, again, the part that the business community actually wants. There's a bunch of goodies in there for them, a bunch of public-private partnerships that they'll profit off of. And so he was obsessed with this whole idea of, can I get, 10 Republicans to vote for my thing? And that wasted a lot of time and a lot of momentum. So much of a presidency is about getting done what you can in the first 100 days. And instead, because they had to have these long, drawn-out negotiations around the infrastructure package and trying to figure out what Republicans could possibly support, it's dragged on months and months and months. Meanwhile, Biden, of course, is sinking in the polls.
I mean, to levels that were not seen since Trump, and he ain't got the same enthusiasm.
There's a new poll that says Trump has higher approval rating than Biden now. So that's where we are, and that's in part because they have allowed this thing to linger for so many months. It's a mess. That's the bottom line.
It's a total mess. It's possibly worse than Obamacare in terms of how it would actually work out politically. And look, just ask yourself, is there any reason why you think right now that this bill needs to pass? Go and ask people around you. Honestly, people were more invested in the Obamacare one than they are in this.
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody knows what's actually in this bill. Everybody thinks it's like some weird stuff going on in DC, 1.6, 1.9. I don't really understand. Bottom line is, it looks like if you're, rely on childcare, which they've been pushing now for a long time, price actually might go up for you. I just think politically, it's a total and complete disaster. Meanwhile, I mean, you've got, all the coronavirus approval rating that Biden has is just going dramatically down. His independent number today is at 28%. 28%, a group that he won in the high 50s whenever he ran for, whenever he won the presidency in 2020.
A very high quality pollster
too. I think on Monday we'll do a whole set, because we've had now, I think, 6-7 different polls that came out with the same thing. Look, I mean, you should look at the average, and in the average amongst the independents, it's an average of around a 20 to 30% drop. And I don't think that it's an accident that they're focusing on this stuff. Meanwhile, people are wondering what the hell is going on with Corona and more. It's a nightmare. I mean, I guess, should we move on to taxes?
Yeah,
because people should be explained.
I do want to move on to the taxes piece. I want to emphasize what you said about Obamacare, because part of why people were invested in that is because it was one thing. It was
the
healthcare.
Pre-existing conditions.
It was healthcare.
People could understand
People could understand, okay, this is a debate about healthcare. What's my healthcare? Is price going to go up? Is price going to go down? Is there going to be, it was about one thing. When you have a debate about 50 things, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around what your vested interests are in all of it. And you've got, of course, predictably, the media is terrible at covering these sorts of things as well. But it's not just a media failure. It is a dramatic Democratic Party failure and should definitely be seen as such. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.